Welcome to Daniel's Numbers Revisited. 2,300 days will be the vision. As many of you know, we went to Israel to witness whatever the sign of the beginning of the 2,300 days was on the first day of Hanukkah. And many of you also know that much to what we maybe expected, it didn't happen exactly the way we expected. And I realized when that happened that I needed to go back and look at the scripture again and reread chapter 8 of Daniel and make sure that I was um, reading the context of it correctly. And I realized I wasn't. I was focusing in on a couple of verses instead of the whole of the chapter. And I just wanted to bring to your attention that really it's all about the vision is 2,300 days. With that being said, let's just jump right into the text and jump right into the things that we need to dissect that and to understand it clearly. So when you look at Daniel's hour of judgment that you're all familiar with, if you're familiar with my work and our work, you will notice that, we have this 2,300 days starting on Hanukkah there in 2024 on the 26th of December. And many of you maybe looked in the news and looked in all the different possibilities and realized that, well, the daily sacrifice didn't start. And I began to realize that I will restate it. The structure of these numbers, I think, is absolutely solid. That being said, the framework within inside of those numbers, I've always said, is a little bit of conjecture and putting in the points all together. So with that, I wanted to go in and dissect Daniel chapter 8 and get a little clearer picture of what we're talking about, because I will tell you that I believe these numbers absolutely started in Israel on the 26th. Let's jump right into the text. Then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto the certain saint which spake, how long shall be, big word, the vision concerning the daily sacrifice, the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden under foot? And he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. What that just stated is that I always kind of just isolated that first phrase, the daily sacrifice. And I didn't even take into account the fact we're talking about the whole of the vision. How long shall be the vision concerning these things? And so what we got to do is take in context those words and then dissect it a little better, because what I did do is isolate that very first thing, the daily sacrifice. And when you read in Daniel 12, I'm going to say verse around starting around verse 10, 11-ish, it goes on to say, to the time that the sanctuary or the abomination of desolation is 1,290 days. So obviously, the way I was interpreting it almost stated that there was two starts of the daily sacrifice. And I'm not going to go and put my feet in stone and say that even at the 1,209 days, the daily sacrifice begins, although it does seem logical to me. I don't want you to ever take into account that I believe I know every detail of what this is going to do. But what we really are talking is how long is the vision concerning the daily sacrifice? And some would say, well, Daniel chapter 8 has already been fulfilled in the days of Antiochus Epiphanes, and then with Alexander the Great conquering the known world, and then his four generals splitting off and becoming those four kingdoms spoken of in Daniel. Well, I think that is actually Isaiah 46, 9 and 10, where it says, I will show you from the past the things of the future. And I base that argument based on Daniel 8, 23 and through 24 and other places, that this is actually concerning the latter days, because it says so. It's just a type being given to us from Alexander the Great. And in the latter time, let's just read Daniel 8, verse 23 and 24. And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to a full, the king of dark countenances and understanding dark cynicism shall stand up, and his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power, and he shall destroy wonderfully and shall prosper and practice and destroy the mighty and the holy people. Well, that first phrase says that in the latter time is of their kingdom. So this is speaking latter time, and I'm going to reinforce that here in a minute with more connections here. So let's go to verse 2 and let's talk about the chapter in context. Here we are in the context where Daniel's talking about this whole vision. And I saw in a vision, and it came to pass when I saw that I was at Shushan in the palace, which was in the province of Elam, and I saw a vision, and I was by the river Ulai or something, if I said that right. And you see there where it's located, it's just barely into the border of Iran from Iraq. It's just barely over the border, and it is actually where they have a memorial to Daniel and a tomb to Daniel. To this day, they have a memorial to him. So Daniel is listed there or is honored there in that area now, and you could actually go visit it if you felt comfortable going into Iran. Okay, so that's kind of the area where it is. It's kind of was part of the Seleucid Empire or whatever. When all these things broke up, is where Daniel was. However, antagonists, the first and so forth, actually were more in the Turkey area there. You can see, and that is just a little bit of a background of the historical fulfillment of these things. So that being said, let's just jump from here, and you'll see the layout of all these things as we go forward. It's interesting that those types of things were patterning even back then in Antiochus's time. We've seen this development. Going into verse 9, and out of one of them came forth a little horn which waxed exceedingly great towards the south and towards the east and towards the pleasant land. Make no misunderstandings here. The pleasant land is the land of Judea, or the land of Israel. And the pleasant land is always referred to that covenant land where Christ fulfilled the covenant to atone for our sins, even to the host of heaven. So he waxed very great, and it cast down some of the hosts of the stars to the ground. So usually this little horn that is referred to that cast some of the stars to the ground, stars usually refer to mighty people, prophets, those kind of people, and stamped upon them. Yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away. So now we got a connecting parallel there. And the palace, or the place, rephrased, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down, and a host was given him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression. So something caused him to have this ability to persecute, and it is a transgression, probably by the holy people. And it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. So now we have a little context of the little horn coming forth. And you say, well, it's the little horn Antiochus Epiphanes. And the answer is he was a type of the little horn. Let's read on in verses 15 through 19, of which verse 19 I use in a lot of my videos, where it says, for at the time appointed the end shall be. But let's just read it in context of chapter 8 so that you understand that this was actually a type in the past that is going to play out in our day, in the current, present fulfillment. Okay, and it came to pass when even I, Daniel, had seen the vision and sought for the meaning, then behold, there stood before me as it were the appearance of a man, and I heard a man's voice between the banks of the Uri, which called and said, Gabriel, make this man to understand the vision. So he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was afraid and fell upon my face. But he said unto me, understand, O son of man, for at the time of the end shall be the vision. Now, I highlighted that in red so that you can see that this is absolutely telling us about the time of the end. He just used types of the past to show it to us. So this is absolutely playing out in modern day time in prophetic significance. So he says, for at the time of the end shall be the vision. Now, what did he say in the verses before in the 2300 days? How long is the vision? And that's the big mistake I made. I made the mistake of assuming that was the daily sacrifice, but it's the whole of the vision that we're talking about here. Now, as he was speaking with me, I was in a deep sleep on my face toward the ground. But he touched me and set me upright. And he said, Behold, I will make thee know what shall be the end of the indignation. For at the time appointed the end shall be. That's my favorite quote verse to introduce this topic, that at the time appointed the end shall be is at the Moedim, or at the Moed the end shall be, which is the festivals of the Lord, the appointed times on his appointed appointment book that he has given us in a prophetic word, that are his rendezvous with the earth in a cyclical sense of the word. And it is played out, obviously, at the time of Moses, and it played out at the time of Christ's first coming, and it will play out again at the time of his second coming, which I believe is nigh unto us. Okay, now, that being understood, I just want to clarify that what the 2300 days is referring to is the vision of this whole scenario of the daily sacrifice all the way to the abomination of desolation. So that was the big mistake I did, is kind of isolate that first little phrase, the daily sacrifice, instead of taking the context of the whole of the vision. Now I'm going to go farther into this now, and I'm going to show you that I believe with a surety, pretty much, that this did take place, that it did begin in context. What we want to do here is give you the background. So I'm actually going to start with some fun stuff on this trip we just made on Hanukkah. We call it the Hanukkah trip. We start on the Sea of Galilee and then go forward, and we show you the background of the story here to begin with, and then we'll get more into the story. But I'm going to start with a video clip here. So let's just jump right into that video clip.
A vision of peace, a promise of grace. Through trials and tribulations, we find our place. In the time of despair, we cling to his word. The message of Daniel, let it be heard.
We can swing down and pick you up if we need to. But if you just go to those ridges down there,
Drop down.
right in that area is where Clarence was running all over there.
You find out.
Why would you guys want that?
Yeah, parking lot.
I'm right.
You gotta top down, because a lot of these edges you'll see they're cliffs. They drop off, so yeah, there is a way down into the valley right over.
Because according to this, they're closer than that. Sodom and Gomorrah is really close.
Okay.
That's what it's saying. I don't know.
So you were quoting Ezekiel 36. Now I'm going to jump to 37.
Okay.
And the reason I show this, these are the spices that we found in the cave. 1,500 pounds of spices. That turns out to be the spices for the Ketorah, for the tabernacle and the temple. And the reason I always like to show this is that I always say at Shiloh, ideas are becoming reality. Red heifers used to be an idea, now they're reality.
Spice is a reality.
Is a reality. Because the copper scroll says beneath the spices there is purification. That's the ancient ashes from the time of Moses. So traditionally, whenever they'd burn a new one, they'd add the old one in with the new one. So they said 9 of them have been burned so far. So what I find interesting personally is that after 2,000 years, and here, against all odds, I'm taking care of potential new ones. Most of my Jewish friends say, well, if it says sanctuary, that means the temple. So my point is that stones in the tabernacle is there. I wouldn't touch it. Not just any Jewish person would touch it. Only the Levites would touch it, but they wouldn't touch it without the ashes of the red heifer.
Without purification.
So what I find interesting, the copper scroll comes to the point after all these thousands of years that potentially the same time we have archaeologists moving to 40-place stones, we're also going to have an archaeologist looking beneath the spices for the ashes of the red heifer. Well, one of these would qualify now already. A couple of them would.
We have all of the ingredients coming together to fulfill this vision. And I would say the vision actually culminates in the temple, which actually is what the red heifers are necessary for. We used to believe it was necessary to have the ashes of red heifer to start the daily sacrifice. But in reviewing with the rabbis and different things, they were more clearly informed, or we are more clearly informed, that it actually is not necessary for the daily sacrifice to start. It's only necessary for the cleansing to deal with the tabernacle and like the Ark of the Covenant and those types of things, that is the symbolic meaning of the ashes of the red heifer, to purify, to sprinkle the nation, to bring it to a different point. We have made some misassumptions in the past. Being said, all of these things are lining up, that this vision is in the process of being fulfilled. When you understand the significance of December 26th, which is the first day of Hanukkah 2024, which by my calculations is the beginning of the 2300 days, you have to ask yourself, well, if the daily sacrifice didn't start, what happened? And we're going to actually go into what happened, which I believe is substantiation to the fact that these 2300 days has begun. Okay, I wanted to just clarify, we are actually, we're able to have an incredible opportunity. We were able to go onto Temple Mount with the guy who's over the security of the Temple Mount, and he was able to give us a personal tour where we could do all the things you can't normally do. And we were able to go into the dome and under the Dome of the Rock and into Al-Aqsa's mosque. I can't say it, I'll try. Anyway, and then we were able to go underneath Temple Mount and into the subterranean structure, where I believe that in that subterranean structure was passageways where they took the Ark of the Covenant through before they went into captivity. So I believe that Jeremiah had the Ark of the Covenant removed and taken into, obviously, caverns to underneath where Christ was crucified. I believe that it was taken there to preserve it and to fulfill Daniel verse 9, verse 24 through 26. And I believe those things did take place as stated in Daniel 9. This guy that we interviewed is Palestinian. He's definitely not from the background we have. We are getting a Palestinian perspective and a Muslim perspective. And the thing that's important about this is to understand what it exposes about where we are at in all of this. So without any further ado, this guy actually will tell a little bit of his story as we go, and then we'll talk.
And I don't know if you noticed that we have lots of water wells. Wherever you look, you're going to find wells everywhere. At least 46, 47. But believe me, not more than 6 or 7 working wells, because, excavating, digging underneath, they destroyed everything. They are trying to find something, to prove something, that they belong to you. Look, nobody denies that something used to be here for them. And when I said here, I didn't mean this compound here in the country. Because Jew used to be here before you, me, here in this land and this earth. But even if you find anything in the future, do you think that we're gonna destroy our building for you to build your third temple? Impossible. I've been here for more than 1,500 years. So I don't care what used to be here. The problem that the Americans give us excuses, silly excuses. Let them dig. Maybe they're gonna find something. Find something? Okay, why? They said that there is something used to be here 2,000 years ago. Maybe 300 years ago. Your country used to be for the Indians. Paper in my offices. I have papers. It's all older than the whole United States of America. Why? Why this double standard democracy? It's disgusting. What we are facing here is super dangerous. We are facing everybody alone. This is the problem. Alone. And to be honest, we believe that we are right. But again, we are not just protecting our properties, we are protecting the whole Holy Land. Your properties, our holy places, your holy places. What we are facing here is super dangerous, dangerous. And again, we are alone. I'm sorry. I know that you came here for fun, but you need to understand what is happening here. It is super important for anybody who came to this compound, to this country, to understand the city. I know it's not easy to understand, but you need at least to understand that we are on the edge of a boom. Religious war, it's not between the Palestinians and the Israelis, no. A small example, maybe here in this country we are 4 or 5 million Muslims. How many we are outside? 2.5 billion. Do you think is it difficult to reach any synagogue in Europe? To bomb anything? It's not. It's not difficult at all.
So right here, you understand that he just told you that there is Islam all over the world, and that just like he said in Amsterdam, where they had that attack on the Jews, he's saying, hey, you think it's difficult for us to do this anywhere? So he's actually telling us that. It's really fascinating. He says we're on the edge of kaboom. Make sure you note that.
Do you know what happens maybe 2 months? No, it's less than 2 months. In Amsterdam for the Israeli team? What I'm trying to say that we are trying not to start a religious war. No. This is what we are trying to ask the powerful government to stop. Because, again, we are on a huge, I don't know, it's a very dangerous thing. Look, you know this, I don't know if you know him, but we have a minister that he is super radical to serve in his own army, and now he is the Minister of Security. Do you believe that? And now he's controlling everything.
So he just told us that the Minister of Security, from his perspective, is totally radical, and he's in charge of everything in Israel, this Minister of Security, which we're going to learn more about here shortly. So let's just continue. We entered the Temple Mount from the northeast corner, and we're standing in the northeast corner there on Temple Mount. And when this discussion is taking place, this is a gate that you normally are not allowed to go through, where we were allowed to go through because of knowing somebody who knows somebody who let us get in touch with this guy who is the head of security on Temple Mount. And he is the one discussing this with us at this time. And we're just grateful for this opportunity we were given. It's interesting to hear, like I said, all of his perspective. So let's just proceed as he takes us into the Dome of the Rock, the upper platform of Temple Mount itself. Before we do, though, let's just talk about this Minister of Security of Israel. His name is Itamar Ben-Gurion, if I said it right. And this guy actually is the guy that replaced the old Minister of Defense and is now over the defense of Israel. And this becomes significant because of what he did in protest to the status quo. He almost did a Gandhi thing here, where he went totally against the status quo. And I want to just show you what he did on the first day of Hanukkah, the 26th. And you just heard what this leader of the security force for the Palestinians on Temple Mount had to say about him, that he's radical, crazy, from their point he is, because what he just did flies in the face of the status quo that has been there since Israel occupied there. They have been in charge of the security on Temple Mount by permission from the Israeli government since 1967. They actually possessed it before the War of 67, the Six-Day War. But since 67, they made a deal to not disrupt the status quo on Temple Mount. But he went on to Temple Mount and did the most radical thing you can imagine. He prayed. And when he was on Temple Mount, he posted it. That's what's even more amazing, is he didn't just go do it, but he posted it on his social media account that he did do it. And he says, I went up to our holy place this morning to pray for the safety of our soldiers and for the speedy return of all those kidnapped and for a complete victory with God's help. So what Itamar Ben-Gurion did is Like Gandhi, he went and in protest to the fact that Jews are not allowed to pray on Temple Mount, and he prayed on Temple Mount. And I don't know if you follow the news or not, but there's many Israelis, or rephrased, there's many Jews who have gone on Temple Mount and prayed and been arrested for that. The difference is they cannot arrest him because he's their boss. So their boss went on to Temple Mount and prayed in defiance of the status quo. I don't think you understand the significance of all this and how big this is and what's happening in all of this. It's pretty big, pretty amazing. And what it did is sprung into motion, I believe, the events leading up to this end time scenario. As we left Temple Mount from this visit with this security man from the Temple Mount security, we went out what I believe they call the Iron Gate. And right outside the gate, we had this group of Israeli Jews who were just outside the security perimeter that is established by the Israeli police force there in Jerusalem to keep Jews from praying when they're not supposed to. Jews can only go onto Temple Mount between certain hours, between the Muslim prayers, for just a little while, an hour and a half in the morning, I think, or so, and an hour and a half at night. Anyway, as we left, we encountered this group of Jews who were just outside the security fence and were obviously making a singing chant that is a little bit in protest of the status quo, but also acknowledging something big had just happened. And I got this translated by my bus driver friend. Now you notice the security fence there and the Israeli soldiers between them and the entrance to Temple Mount, just a few yards away. And they're singing just outside that fence, and they're saying, from this, the victory. This is the victory. What they're doing is they're basically saying, this is happening. This is going forward. The vision has started, in my perspective, that this act of civil disobedience by Itamar Ben-Gurion has established a precedence now that has put things into motion that's going to be trotting the Temple Mount underfoot in many ways. A lot of things are about to happen, and I'm going to give you more of what Amoni, I can't remember how to pronounce his name, the Jordan, or I should say the Israeli security man. I'm going to give you more of that interview now.
These propagations are super dangerous. These people are super dangerous. This is the cancer of the city. This is the cancer of the whole earth. The main reason for October the 7th is these people.
So right there, he just referred to the Jews as the cancer of the whole earth. And he's about to say that October 7th is all about this. And as we know from the mosque guy, the red heifers. They see this mount, Alaska Mosque, and the whole mountain he's referring to as Alaska. They see this as an absolute provocation for the October 7th attack, as you will listen.
The main reason for October the 7th is these people. Why? Don't believe me. Maybe you're going to say that he's a Palestinian. We used to have more than 16 schools inside this compound. 16. Now we have just 4. Was the rest occupied by the Israel forces? So what we are facing here is super dangerous. And I'm going to tell you something. Before the 7th of October, before October the 7th, I warned everybody that.
So he just says that they had schools there in on Temple Mount that used to meet, but now they're down to 4 because they have Israeli surveillance that they're not teaching them terrorism, is what I would interpret, but he's got a little different perspective. Anyway, moving on.
That we are on the edge of a boom. 2 weeks ago, I was in the United States for more than 2 months in the State Department. Silly people, shits are ruling your country. This is a problem. Your media are shit media. You don't know anything about what is happening here. So now most of the people are blaming the Palestinians that they started October the 7th. No. And they want us to condemn the 7th of October. No. We've been facing these people for over 75 years. What happens in October is just a reaction for a big action. And now, believe me, we are on the edge of the religious war. These people, the problem is not the Muslims, no. Their problem was not Jew. And when you leave this compound, just Google it, what happens in Jerusalem just before October the 7th. And you will see how many Christian cemetery they dig. Just because they are Christians. How many Christian tours they attack, and how many Christian lady they sexually abuse inside the Altar of Jerusalem. Again, don't believe me. Just when you go out, just take your phone and Google it. And you will see videos.
Okay, so let's just talk about what he just said a little bit. How many Christian cemeteries they dig. That's referring to how many graves they did. I want you to know that when we were in Israel, not this last time, but the time before this, we were on the bus with our Muslim friend driver. And don't get me wrong, I don't think people are necessarily bad and wrong. I think sometimes our ideology gets turned upside down. Many things happen along the way. It's just like, personally, I believe Jimmy Carter was a good man, but not such a good president, because he had some mistaken ideology that is easy to happen in this world. And so when we talk about the problem being the Jews, not, the cancer as he would refer it, when we talk about those things, you've got to understand that he watches different media than I watch, and different media than the bulk of America watches. He actually watches media that is leaning towards his perspective. Why do I say that? When you search YouTube, you get a customized version of what you see. And if you listen to mainstream media, you just get their version of what you see. But he gets his version of what he sees. And why do I say that? Well, on the bus, our Muslim driver, as we were during the war and the missile attacks were happening, on the media he was watching, Gaza was winning at that moment. So I just wanted you to keep this all perspective, that information slant affects a lot of everything we see and feel. And it is actually a humble thing to realize that the very elect can be deceived if it were possible in our day. So it becomes absolutely necessary that we keep the spirit of prayer and discernment with us so that we can have God lead us to understanding a correct perspective.
Google it. And you will see videos. You will see videos. This is the problem. The media is the main problem. I'm telling you, don't believe anything you hear in your media, especially in the United States.
Okay, so you just heard him talk about the different perspectives of media. And I would absolutely agree with him in part that the media is kind of garbage. We do have so much slant in media and so much fake news, and it behooves all of us to be really careful. I think there's references in Isaiah that when the servant comes, he will not believe his eyes. And that's not hard to even wrap your head around anymore, because in reality, with AI, with everything that's happening, it's getting to the point where it is very difficult, and you have to have the Spirit of God with you, and you have to have the Spirit of discernment with you to even understand what's going on and what's happening, and to understand what you can believe and what you cannot believe. So let's just go to Isaiah 56:7, talking about the time we're in, and what's going down and what's happening, and what did Itamar Ben-Gurion, I think I'm saying it right, what perhaps did start on Hanukkah, the first day of Hanukkah, this thing that they were chanting at the gates, from this our victory. Now we're talking the Jews' perspective. Keep these different perspectives in mind. Even them will I bring to my holy mountain and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices shall be accepted upon my altar, for my house shall be called a house of prayer for all people. Well, obviously something's got to happen to bring this about, and it's in the process of happening, I believe. We're on the current stage. The countdown has begun. And I know that people are going to discount a lot of the work I have done based on the fact it didn't happen exactly the way I said. Well, Trump didn't happen exactly the way we thought Ezra Ziegel would go either. And even Ezra's eagle now may not happen exactly as we think, but that doesn't change the structure of it all being pretty accurate, and that we just have to stay diligent to understand how it does play out. We have given conjectures how we thought it would play out. And I want to be very clear with that. When you look at Daniel's numbers and you look at the structure of Daniel's numbers, we have given our perspective on how we perceive the framework of prophecy will fit within them. But we might have those details off a little. And I want you to just know that it's the framework that's almost completely impossible to not be accurate. It's not necessarily our interpretation of what we thought the fulfillment would look like. And I would say the same applies to Ezra's eagle. We might not understand what the fulfillment looks like, but I believe with an absolute assurity that the clock is running. Okay, so that being said, let's just move ahead and let's analyze the word in the pictorial Hebrew, which is something I love to do. In the pictorial Hebrew, the word for vision is pronounced Hakson, and it starts with the chet, the sa, the said, the vav, and the noon. Okay, and let's just evaluate what it means. Like I said, it's pronounced kazon, which I have a hard time doing pronunciations anyway, let alone Israeli pronunciations or Hebrew pronunciations. But let's evaluate what it means. So vision, what does it mean? What does that actually in the pictorial Hebrew mean? Well, it means to protect man's journey and make sure life. Okay, that's what the purpose of vision is to give us a little bit of a guideline and a little bit of a make sure, so when we see it happening, we can equate the markers and the points of history. Now, is it perfect? No, I would say there's a lot of people who just have vision go right by them. They do not see, they do not understand, they do not discern. It's our job to discern and to understand if we want to be the very elect that will not be deceived, because it definitely says, if possible, we will be deceived. That's pretty tall warning. Okay, another way you can interpret it is to protect the journey and add continuity. To add continuity to the whole thing so that we can see it all taking place. So when we talk about this 2,300 days, what we're trying to do is add a continuity or a understanding of the vision that's the 2,300 days, which is what I believe began in decisions in the minds of like the defense minister, in the minds of like the Jews, in the minds of the Palestinians. This is actually drawing more of a line in the sand. And if you read the last of the verse, it says, how long is a vision that the sanctuary shall be trodden underfoot? That's what we're talking about here. I believe, as I have stated, we're going to see lots more trouble and wars and rumors of wars until the treaty is confirmed. Well, I think that's an important word, confirmed, in Daniel 9, verse 27. That means a treaty already exists, but it is confirmed by the Antichrist, most probable. Okay, so that being said, we're now starting to get a handle on what is being referred to in the 2,300 days, in which I think I jumped a little to conclusions to think it was the daily sacrifice. And had I thought about it more, and I actually did think about it a little, and it takes a while for some things to gel inside your mind. In Daniel 12, it talks about the daily sacrifice coming to an end from 1,290 days. So obviously I was misthinking that a little, because that's almost two starts. And I thought maybe the daily sacrifice would start and then be confirmed. But obviously, when you read it in context, which I probably should have been more careful, it says, how long is the vision concerning the daily sacrifice? So that's what's 2,300 days.